The Whistleblowers originated with an interview with a whistleblower and a book that I wanted to write, which never materialized. But it made me really consider what happens to whistleblowers in South Africa and their plight, the value that we don't give to whistleblowers. And I just thought that it was so important to shine a light on the issue of whistleblowers in South Africa. So I thought, well, instead of writing a book about one whistleblower, let me rather look at a cross-section of whistleblowers in South Africa. So I set about searching for whistleblowers, meeting with them, listening to their stories, asking them to be interviewed for this book, which often was a process in itself. And the end result is the book, which is The Whistleblowers now, which looks at a cross-section of people in South Africa who've chosen to speak up, who've chosen to speak truth to power, who have risked everything for the interests of truth and of justice, and about what happens to them in South Africa. So this is by no means an exhaustive look at the country's whistleblowers. There's no clear criteria of who I chose to include. They're not necessarily the best or the most noble or those with the most integrity. Instead, I looked at people whose stories grabbed me in some way, who were compelling, and those were the narratives that I included. But I also wanted to display a cross-section of experiences. So in some instances, people have been able to leverage their roles as whistleblowers and make a career out of it. For others, the results have been absolutely catastrophic and they have been left devastated, unemployed, broken, and really paying the price emotionally and financially. So I wanted the reader to get a really full understanding of what that experience is. Sometimes the results are great, and we see money being paid back to the fiscus, or we see people being held to account and going to jail. But in the majority of the cases, unfortunately, the results are dire. So one of the reasons that I wanted to write this book was because I really wanted to advocate for some kind of cultural change and legislative change as well. And you find that in the US and the UK, whistleblowers are often placed on a pedestal. They're celebrated. You have books written about them and movies made about them. But in South Africa, there are very different consequences for a whistleblower. So I want people to appreciate what these whistleblowers go through, what they sacrifice, so that they're treated differently in society, and that we too place them on a pedestal and celebrate them. And they should be treated as heroes. They should be given national orders. We should really applaud them and appreciate them and laud them, and we don't. So there are laws in the country that protect whistleblowers, and the main one is the Protected Disclosures Act. But without fail, every single whistleblower that I interviewed said that they had been let down by the PDA, that they had been completely failed, that it was not practical, that it didn't work in application. And that's one of the things that I'd like to advocate for as well, is not just a societal and a cultural change, but also a legislative change. We need better laws to protect whistleblowers, and some of them have made suggestions in the book as well, where they've suggested something like a Chapter 9 organisation that would facilitate whistleblowing. Unfortunately, corruption is a very topical issue right now, and we've seen that with PPE procurement and COVIDpreneurs, and how they are just feeding at the trough of government funding at the moment. And unfortunately, that's why it's so important that we have whistleblowers in this country, that they come out and they expose what is going on. We wouldn't know about the Gupta leaks if it wasn't for a whistleblower. We would never know the extent of state capture at parastatals and at SOEs if it wasn't for brave insiders who chose to speak up and tell the public and take us into their confidence. In a lot of the instances, it also took a lot of trust for people to speak to me, because they'd been so badly betrayed and burnt already. And it was a heavy burden to carry, but nowhere near in comparison to what a lot of the whistleblowers have been through. But I also feel that it's a duty and a responsibility to be a conduit for those stories, so that they are amplified and people know about them.